You know, for most of our lifetimes, the US dollar has been the undisputed king of global finance. It's just the way things were. But that's changing. And I don't mean just a few shaky headlines. We are talking about a deep, fundamental shift that's remaking the entire system from the ground up.
And that, of course, brings us to the big elephant in the room question. Is the dollar's reign finally over? Now look, I know what you're thinking. People have been crying wolf about this for decades. But this time, for the first time, the actual data is pointing to something new, something that feels a whole lot more real.
But here's the absolute key to understanding what's going on. This isn't some Hollywood disaster movie where the dollar just implodes overnight. What's actually happening is way more complex and, frankly, a lot more interesting. The system isn't breaking down, it's fragmenting. It's reorganizing itself into a brand new, multipolar financial world.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by looking at the actual cracks showing up in the dollar's foundation. Then, we'll get into gold's wild and surprising comeback. After that, we dive into the new digital currency battleground. Check out the rise of some powerful regional players. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together and see what this new financial world really looks like.
All right, let's get right into it. Part 1, the cracks in the foundation. And let's be super clear, this isn't about opinions or predictions. We're starting with the cold, hard numbers that show the dollar's dominance is slowly, but without a doubt, starting to wear away. So what are we looking at here? This is official data from the IMF showing what central banks all over the world are holding in their vaults. Now, check out that top line for the US dollar. It's a clear, steady drift downwards through 2025. But the real story, the one that jumps off the page, is at the bottom. That other currencies category. It's not just growing, it's speeding up. And this chart really drives that point home. By the third quarter of 2025, that other slice, at almost 21%, has officially become larger than the euro share of global reserves. That is a huge deal. This is diversification happening in real time. Central banks aren't just looking for one safe place to park their cash anymore, they're spreading their bets.
But hey, this erosion isn't just about what other countries are doing. The dollar's foundation is also being rattled by things happening right at home. Policy decisions that have sent shockwaves of uncertainty across the entire globe. Yeah, 2025 delivered a real 1-2 punch to global confidence. First, you had the reciprocal tariff order, which basically turned trade policy into a weapon, and that made everyone, friends and foes alike, pretty nervous. Then came the haymaker. Moody's downgraded the US credit rating. This directly challenged the core idea that US debt is the world's ultimate risk-free asset. And then a record deficit report just poured gasoline on the fire.
Okay, so if the world's confidence in the ultimate risk-free asset is getting shaky, where do the world's central bankers turn for safety? Well, let's move to our next section because the answer, believe it or not, is one of the oldest assets on the entire planet.
Just look at that number, 863 tons. Let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering amount of gold that central banks bought up in 2025 alone. To give you some perspective, that's more gold than the entire reserves of Japan. And this isn't just China and Russia. We're talking about staunch US allies like Poland being some of the biggest buyers. It's a global race for a neutral, de-risked asset.
And all of that buying led to this really historic moment in early 2026, what we're calling the Great Crossover. For the first time in modern history, the total value of gold held by the world's central banks became greater than their holdings of US Treasury debt. I mean, the symbolism here, it's just impossible to miss. It's a massive collective vote to de-risk away from any one country's promises and go back to a physical, neutral store of value.
But hold on, this fragmentation isn't just about shuffling old-school assets like gold bars. Oh no, there is a parallel revolution happening in the digital world. A new, technological Game of Thrones is kicked off, and whoever wins could control the future of global finance itself.
So in one corner, you've got Project mBridge, and the digital Silk Road analogy is just perfect for it. This is a platform led by China and its partners that lets countries in the global south trade directly with each other using central bank digital currencies. The key here is it completely bypasses the traditional Western-led financial system. And with over $55 billion in transactions already, this is not some science fair project. This is happening now.
And in the other corner, you have the G7's answer, Project Agora. This brings together 7 of the world's biggest central banks, including the US Fed. Now, their goal is totally different. They're not trying to bypass the system, they're trying to upgrade it from within. creating a unified platform for digital assets to make the current dollar-centric world faster and more efficient.
And then you have the wild card, stablecoins. Basically, these are privately issued digital tokens pegged to a currency, usually the US dollar. Think of them as a private shadow army of digital dollars. With a market cap blowing past $260 billion, they're spreading the dollar's influence into corners of the globe traditional banking can't even touch. The catch? They operate completely outside the control of any central bank.
Now, it would be a huge mistake to think this is just a two-horse race between the US and China. The fragmentation is actually going much deeper than that. We're seeing the rise of powerful regional players who are busy building their own financial ecosystems, independent of both of those big blocks.
For example, India is exporting its amazing UPI payment system as a cheap, fast alternative to SWIFT. The ASEAN bloc of Southeast Asian nations is building a framework so they can trade more with each other in their own local currencies, basically cutting the dollar out of the loop. And then you have the really big one, Saudi Arabia joining mBridge. This is a game changer because it opens the door to a future where oil might not be priced and paid for in dollars.
So, we've got a weakening dollar, gold making a huge comeback, a digital currency Cold War, and the rise of regional powers. What does this new world actually look like when you put it all together? Let's try to pull these threads together and sketch out the new global financial map.
And this really gets to the single most important takeaway from all of this. We need to stop asking, what's going to replace the dollar? That's just the wrong question now. The real question is, how do we all adapt to a world that has multiple parallel systems running all at the same time? It's not about a replacement. It's about navigating a world that doesn't have one single center anymore.
So the way to think about this new order is like a three-layer cake. At the very foundation, the base layer, you've got gold. It's back as the ultimate neutral asset that everyone can kind of agree on. The middle layer is the battleground, three competing sovereign blocks, the incumbent dollar/agora block, the challenger RMB/mBridge block, and those independent regional blocks. And then layered right on top, you have the Wild West, this fast, unregulated layer of private money, powered by stablecoins, flowing across and outside of all those established systems.
Which leaves us all with one final, pretty sobering question. For almost 80 years, the global economy has had a single financial anchor. As we enter this new era of monetary warring states where power's fragmented and trust is getting scarce, how do any of us, whether you're a nation, a company, or just an individual, navigate a world that has lost its center of gravity?